while growing up, all of us have heard about the theatre, and it has played a big role in our life. At least when we saw taxis throwing handbills around the place and we chased it to get one for ourselves. But with me today is someone who has gone far, far deeper into the world of the theatre, and that is Professor Rafael Fernandes, PhD. He has been the author of this book, most importantly. He has also been the HOD, Head of Department of Goa University's Department of English, where he retired in the year 2021. Over to you, Rafael. I know you've done a very interesting work. This is fully based on local research, and it has come out from Goa University, and this is your book, which was your PhD. Tell us about it. In short, give a hint about
it. After I finished MA in 1987, I was left to decide what I should do next. Of course, I was already teaching. And at an interview 1 or 2 years later, Professor Balchan Nimade asked me the topic of research that I was taking up. So I mentioned to him that I was thinking of doing something on theatre. And he asked me, where are your resources? So I was a little stumped.
That was a big question in those days.
I thought, given the number of theatres that were happening all over the place, that there would be a lot of material. Now, why this fascination on theatre is that I felt that I could have done something very convenient, English literature, and that would have been the end of the story.
Take just 3 or 4 novels and do a PhD on it.
Whatever. English literature would have been a very convenient kind of field. But then the question I asked myself was, being in Goa, what are we contributing towards the state? Are we taking up topics that are of interest? And theatre has been a field that has been there for more than a century. Of course, your folk theatre goes to time immemorial, sort of. So when I asked myself that question, what am I doing for the state or for Goa? What is the contribution of the university towards local cultural practices? I felt this was an interesting field. So at that point of the interview, when he said, where are your resources? I was a little surprised. I'd heard of a few books being published. Thomasin had published plays. One, Johnny M. had published a booklet in both in Romi and Nagri. So I thought there must be material. Newspapers used to carry reviews. And also, if you're asking me why this fascination, perhaps, as you mentioned, when young, I would find the theatre announcements very interesting. They would come along in taxis or pickups, and aikat, and then throw the Sutrai, then throw the Jairati, and we would love to, have one for ourselves.
But Rafael, it is an important part of our life, no doubt. But the road you took is a very tough road, because there's very little writing on the theatre. There's even less academic writing on the theatre. And when you're going to your level of research, they would expect you to find some of that, no?
Yeah, let me sort of get back to this origin again. So for some time that interest kind of stayed, and it was virtually dormant because I couldn't manage to start work on.
You were also teaching, no?
Yes, I was
in the university.
But '88 I joined MPhil, and that took about 5 years. So MPhil was on Joseph Conrad. In the meanwhile, they had the 100 years of theatre celebrations, and by which time I had kind of lost interest and did not pursue this as a field of research. But when I got this small scholarship to Portugal in 1997, the professor there asked me, we were kind of hoping to have joint projects with the University of Porto, Professor Carlos Espine. So he drafted a proposal as part of the research and collaborative projects. And when I mentioned to him about theatre, I said they have 3 shows in a day, morning 10:30, then 3:30, 6:30, and maybe even 9:30. So he kind of did mental mathematics, and he says, you mean to say you're talking about so many performances of a theatre, weekends, feast days, village feasts, and so on.
We take these things for granted, no?
Yeah, and he says that's a fantastic number of performances. Here, if somebody does 25 or 40 or 50 celebrated theatre, dramatist, and you are talking of 3 or 4 places having so many shows per day, so it's a fantastic amount. And that kind of got me restarted in the interest, and I felt that there was something worthwhile to go back to and start research on. So 98 he had drafted the proposal. Of course that fell through because email communication broke down and things like that. Then when I got started, this presumption that there would be material, that sort of shocked me, because there were actually very few resources. And at some stage in the research, I was actually stuck. I had registered under Professor Ashok Joshi, and I was responsible for, he trusted me to do whatever I could. And but then I found that it was a struggle trying to find enough sources. I would interview theatrists and they would say, "Yore, bosiare, uloyare," but they would not give you, very few who offered material.
They didn't have written resources probably in most cases.
Many of them had manuscripts,
okay,
but they were more used to talking. Very few had published. Then I even sent a survey to about 50 of them who were on mention in the Kala Academy booklet of 100 Years of Theatre.
They won't respond.
I sent prepaid envelopes with a small questionnaire. About 6 responded. So it was very weak, poor response. Then, providentially, I came across Pai Theatris manuscript.
This was towards the end of your research, I remember.
Somewhere in the middle.
Somewhere
in the middle. And I came to know that his manuscripts were available at the Kohni Academy, Goa Kohni Academy. So I then started looking up his registers, and fantastic treasure.
He wrote, but not many kept written records, no?
He kept about 15 to 16, 15 registers and 1 file.
Wow.
And the moment I started in browsing through them, I found that he had kept fantastic records. I only wish that our theatrists had followed his example. Ideal, really a model for all theatrists. He had kept his manuscripts. At times when he had revised the version, either he made corrections or he rewrote the entire theatre. Sometimes he revised, like Kunbi Jaki, he revised Vauradi, or Bell of Cavell was revised. And then he had written dates of composition or revision.
Wow. What detail, What detail?
Fantastic detail. Then he, interspersed between the pages, you had clippings from newspaper articles.
1890, 100 years back we are talking?
He started in 1893, just 1 year after the first Theatre Lucasin's Italian Burgo. So that was in 17 April 1892. And by 1893 he had started writing Bell of Cavell, which was a comedy. Uses Hindustani, uses French, mixture of languages. Very interesting comedy.
I see.
So, and then he staged it in 1895. That was his first play. But the registers, as I said, the sources, the manuscripts were fantastic. So you had all these cuttings, you had photographs, dates of performances, the number of plays. Then he even mentions, I have written so many, staged so many. I think at one stage it was 16 staged, 11 yet to be staged. Then 4 manuscripts that have been lost or stolen, or borrowed and never returned. I do have those details in my
Getting
book.
it all together must have been quite a challenge, no? Because you're collecting information which is not available.
Thankfully, his information was there. So I could manage to do a substantial amount of the thesis work, analyzing his plays, indexing the whole collection. And then there was I could also manage to get the 2 volumes with which the Goa Kohni Academy has published, Teatran Sogelo 1 and Teatran Sogelo 2. So I could analyze the plays of those theatrists which were contained there. Non-Stop Theatris volume had not been published, and so that was not accessible. In the course of the research, I think what was fascinating was to discover many aspects of theatre that I myself was not aware of.
Like?
So you have, when we say theatre, we normally consider the theatre of Sat Podde with 2 or 3 songs between the Podde. Now, in the 70s, there was also the rise of the non-stop theatre, which became quite a powerful force. Whereas theatre might have had gaps between the acts, or by the time singers came on and they changed the set. The non-stop theatre directors, artists, they had, they made a substantial change in the sense that it was really non-stop. There were very few gaps. And
like
so
a 5-day cricket test match and a one day.
Yes, and so they, I think, threw up quite a challenge in the way that they honed their skill and
why? Any idea? Any idea?
I'm not sure whether they. One of the reasons why they rose was whereas theatre was the formal staged form coming from with the influence of Italian opera in Bombay. In Goa, you already had performances. So you had Khed and Zagur, which then went on to become Khed Theatre the moment it was put on stage by Antonio Moraes in the 60s. It became Khed Theatre. But initially they would have two plays, one before the break, another play of a different director after the break. And then Rosario Fernandes had sort of two plays, his own plays. There would be competitions actually earlier. And then Antonio Moraes also uses the term non-stop. Now, that's a little controversial still because Alfredo said he used the term non-stop. Rosario Rodriguez has used the term non-stop. But I found that in my research that Antonio Moraes was the one who actually used it first when he took his troupe to Bombay in the 60s, 61 or 62 or so. So this kind of gave a competition to theatre in a way because they did not waste time in between the scenes. So you have Khed Zagur, Khed Theatre, then non-stop drama or non-stop theatre, and now it's kind of, it's very difficult to distinguish between theatre and non-stop theatre. Only connoisseurs might be able to say that because the non-stop theatres also have introduced songs, cantos, cantos are part of the play, but they have kantara, and that doesn't distinguish from.
But Rafael, just to emphasize the importance of theatre, it's a very vibrant form of Goan stage.
Yes.
It's in Konkani. It's mostly Romi. It's it's the Baddes dialect. Baddes, sometimes a bit of Sasti. It is economically vibrant, and many people earn a living from it.
Yes.
Apart from the pandemic, the guys have had a good run, and people like Professor Pramod Kale and all have looked up to them. Although his father was staging Shakespeare in St. Xavier's College in the 1920s, he still feels that theatre is so important for Goan culture, and yet at the same time it is orphaned in a certain sense, in the sense that both Catholic and Hindu elites look down on it to a certain extent. Would that be right?
I don't, there is somehow this myth about looking down, and if you speak to a few people, especially maybe a little elitist or whatever, they tend to say, oh, theatre. But from my experience, I have found all kinds of people coming for theatre. I'm fascinated. In fact, I was told that Dr. Pinto Rosario would ensure that he always had seats for theatres which were performed in Mass.
I see.
He would tell Thomasin to reserve seats for him. And even at shows in Kala
the father is Pinto is okay.
And even in Kala Academy, I've kind of tried to look at audiences, and you'll find there are audiences across the spectrum. So
it probably has more to do with our proximity towards the Konkani language and culture rather than
yes, and possibly attitudes. We kind of sometimes presume that it is only those, whereas when you actually go for a performance, you find people from all the walks of life are there, fascinated, and they enjoy the performance. And no doubt that theatre has kind of kept the pulse of Goa, in its performance. If you want to look at any contemporary joke, whatever is happening in politics or society or whatever the event may be, you look at the comedy in the theatre, and you'll find there is a remark that hints at whatever's happening.
Hints at it. The theatre and the theatrists are almost like newspapers, no? Sometimes within 2 or 3 weeks of incidents happening, sometimes in days.
Yes.
They have a song coming out on YouTube now, for instance.
Kantara, of course, they really get the credit. They should be given the credit for producing a song, a kantar, within 1 day even. So hats off to them. I've hardly found that happening anywhere else.
Rafael, to shift dramatically from topics, an interview with you would not be complete if we didn't talk about Rafael, the English teacher, English professor, HOD, also the radio announcer, both in Goa and in Shillong. A bit of it. I know this is embarrassing you, but I think it's an important part of your life.
Yes, I started announcing as a sort of part-time or casual announcer at All India Radio in Shillong. And so those years...
Mid-80s you studied there, no?
I was in Shillong from 77 to 1984, and before that in Darjeeling.
Christian Brothers.
Yes, and in Darjeeling from 73 to 75.
Wow.
Senior Cambridge at Gothal's Memorial. So those formative years were very useful and helpful, and the radio experience in Shillong helped me to
shift over to Goa, get started in
When
Goa.
I came to Goa after some time.
85?
84, 85, yes. I could become a casual announcer here for several years. So that broadcasting experience helped because it gave a perspective of what is suitable for radio, what is suitable for performance, what is suitable for reading. And in teaching literature, sort of if we had a novel or a drama, we could see it from different perspectives. How would text be suitable for adaptation or presentation through various media?
Teaching started in school, St. Lawrence, Akasai, then...
No, I started teaching at in Shillong, St. John's School, which was private, and then St. Anthony's Salesian Institution. I worked there for 7 years. And while I was teaching, I was also studying all along, most of those years. And when I came to Goa, I of course resumed teaching and then continued my studies.
And how was the stint at Goa University? I mean, it's your life now. I mean, everyone would walk into the English language learning lab, and if I go there still, I'll expect to find Professor Rafael around.
The university was almost like a commitment, I think.
Second home.
Yes, to the extent that even the family felt I was more there than at home. Sort of, my wife Nirmala always mentions it that the university was much more to me. And I kind of look back with the 30 years with sort of satisfaction. 33 years, it was good. Whatever my basic philosophy was, if I can do something good, I should do it. And that way, perhaps it required a greater commitment.
You were a favorite teacher of quite a number of students. I know you won't say it, but I need to say it. But teaching English in Goa, what are the challenges today, especially at the higher levels?
Well, I found one thing when I was teaching linguistics, and I offered the lab to students to come and practice on their own, or take cassette tapes at one time and CDs later, that they could use the lab for improving their pronunciation. Very few actually took the offer. The Goan students. I had students from Bangladesh or Karnataka or Arab students who did make that additional use. But Goan students or students from Goa generally have a fairly good level of English, and
makes them overconfident. Perhaps.
Yes. They could have improved a lot had they used these facilities. But very few actually, hardly anyone made use of that.
Because the Goan student has lost out over the years. No, there was a time when they were prominent in advertising, journalism, and all over the country. Maybe another.
I mean, compared to students from other areas, Maharashtra or Karnataka, they do have an edge. Their pronunciation is.
But today our competition is the big cities also,
yes.
no? And they have today we have lost that edge, so-called edge. Anyway,
with the internet and with the availability of media materials across the internet, I think anyone from even a remote place could improve his level of proficiency of English or any language for that matter.
Any words of advice for people wanting to enter the difficult field of local research?
I would say you need to have the open mind. One thing, we cannot go into research with our own ideas. We should be able to listen to other people, be open to whatever. Because sometimes you get you'll get a stray message from someone whom you think may not be so intelligent, and I've actually picked up such conversations at various places, maybe theatre hall or market, and once you get talking to them, you realize that these guys have an interest in various aspects of culture. Where research is concerned, you need the dogged determination, the persistence, and also an eye for detail, sort of interpreting whatever has written. That interpretation may be subject to discussion, but one has to sort of dig deep into whatever sources are there and then connect the dots. There is a lot of scope for research in Goa. In fact, I've been after theatres right from 1987-88, telling them to document their work. Preserve the manuscripts. If it's not possible to have multiple cameras, at least do a single camera recording, but preserve evidence of the work that you've done. Because the theatre is a performance. The script does not tell you anything, and particularly for comedies, the comic shows, which the entertainment that people enjoy. Prince Jacob or Boyer or any of these, they need to sort of have the evidence. I know Prince Jacob has videos of all his performances.
I see.
So I've been telling them to sort of record. Thankfully, at one time they were worried about
they still seem to be now about copyright and whether
not just copyright. I think the fear was there were cases where people recorded and then made not plagiarized. They sold or they put the videos and in small parlors had the shows in UK. So when the theatre troupe went across, they said, we have already seen this. Now that was a shocker. I think Mario mentioned it to me. But I had to sort of, Mario Menezes. But I had sort of to say, if nobody does it, there will be nothing left. Now, thankfully,
But this is a genuine fear, isn't it, Rafael? Because they are depending on the market. And if someone like me goes and shoots it and shares it there with whatever intentions, and that cuts into their market.
It's like a double-edged sword.
Yeah.
The fact is that because some persons like Joe Guayuke has put up at least clippings of performances and videos, songs and so on, Kantara, they've enjoyed a global market. Many of them who would not have been known outside now over the internet because a few individuals have uploaded short video clips and so on. And the attitude has now shifted. At one time, the director or actor would even tell you, please stop taking video filming. But now they say, okay.
Short clips.
Yes. Okay. Now they say, it's okay if you film for your personal
or short clips,
reference or for your personal use. But please don't upload, because the right to upload and the privilege to upload should belong to the owner, the director or performer, whoever. And that's fair enough. And I think that the internet has actually enabled a global audience for them. And you can't imagine the reach, people, the diaspora is sort of coming back to its interest in roots, because here's a very strong cultural performance available.
Just read the other day that there's a theatre going to Aberdeen of all places in Scotland.
Yes. S. Kaitan from Raya, his first theatre. He has been a sponsor of many theatres and theatres. So he's having his first show there. There's many firsts. I think Texas had a show. Australia, New Zealand.
Texas. These are locally produced theatres by people who have some language skills.
Yes,
but they're also taking them from Goa.
If they take the troops from Goa, then they have to pay for all the organizational expenses. I know the Gulf has been a favorite area and successful. London has become also popular now, and with so many theatres.
Pakistan was inviting them, but they are scared to go.
Canada to some extent, but it's a good sign, which means theatres have demand, a lifelong demand.
It's a positive sign, and they need the support. They
don't have to worry about. And I'm saying this because, in spite of the competition from other forms of entertainment, you have sports, you have music. You have cinema, and in spite of the competition from all these other sources, theatre is still holding its ground.
True.
There are audiences, there are more youngsters getting into theatre. Children's theatre is picking up. The Kala Academy and Theatre Academy encouragement is helping. So it's a field that is going to.
Short question. Words of advice for young people wanting to do research on local topics in languages, maybe in Goa. English.
I would say, please do take up
topics, suggestions
research on
What?
Theatre is there's plenty available in the theatre field.
You've not exhausted
What
it,
I have
you're
done is just about like the tip of the iceberg, scratch the surface. There is so much that can be done within Goa. Say local theatre, every village has theatrists. So take up individuals, take up a region, or Bombay. The theatre history in Bombay is still unexplored. Mangalore has its own version of theatre. So wherever the diaspora exists, or in the Gulf, or performances in London, there is a lot that can be documented and researched on theatre itself. Then besides, you have the other cultural performances, folk dances, or Khed, Zagor, and so on.
Goan writing in English, would you suggest?
Yes, but Goan writing in English is kind of very fluid. Basically, how do you identify? The definition still evades clarity. Sort of who is a Goan, and you'll find many Goan writers have not stayed in Goa. They've gone out of Goa and come back, or they have belonged to the diaspora and claim to be Goan. So it's kind of very fluid. It's very open. There is a lot of scope there. Yes, Goa has no shortage of research topics. You go to the archive and it's a gold mine.
Including in the languages.
Yes, there would be a lot. It's just a matter of
dialects in Goa and whatever.
After all, I mean, we are, I think, as academics, perhaps we are obsessed with dialects and registers, all these technical terms. But I'd say let's look at it as language as a whole. Language, and particularly the spoken language, which is supreme. Because there are so many controversies and discussions and debates about the smaller parts of what is Konkani. There's plenty of scope to do this, provided people are convinced that yes, this is worthwhile and this is something that we can do, and whatever research is done will contribute to the society.
On that note, and with this optimistic point, and also kind of path showing suggestion, we'll end up here. Dr. Rafael, thank you so much. You've been a friend and a guide to me. I really appreciate you taking the time. I know we were planning this a long time back, but it never happened. I'm glad it happened today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Frederick. We were classmates once.
And the rest is history. Yeah, thanks.
Thanks a lot.